David.
He was in AA, and there was a lot of doubt whether the guy ever had a drinking problem. He just had one gigantic problem for the world and saving. He's disrupted so many operations, so many meetings that they finally had to bar him. They couldn't have meetings with him. I think he can get a lot of them. He's gone through a lot of people. But he's so helpless in the most objectionable way that he's in danger of starving to death, but he's got about $2,000 coming in.
He makes no effort to try and claim it?
Huh?
He makes no effort to bother claiming it?
No, he went over twice and he said he had to have he said a permanent address. What they wanted was a mailing address. He didn't even give him that. He's willing to be defeated at anything that pops up. You say, see there, the world's against me. He lets it go at that. It's one more mark of some inner martyrdom he's going through. But he's cuckoo, you know. It's just so much easier to be charitable to a charming bum than just an objectionable bum.
How old do you think he is?
I guess he's somewhere between 45 and 50, I would guess. And way in frozen to death. Well, he does somehow. I don't know how he could.
How about that young Dave that came in here faster that day? You heard any more about him?
He looks a little like the other one. No, I'm wondering about him.
Unless you bring out that magic coincidence between the human nature of an actor and
What's David's next move, do you think? Where's he going to show up next?
I'm going to try to get him with a social worker called up and dump him in there. It's their job. You know, take care of people because they won't commit him to the loony bin. He's in that in-between world. He's obviously cuckoo. And muttering himself, wow, he gazes out into space wildly. I don't think he knows what the hell he's saying.
What is this show supposed to be?
This is about that girl who directed Taming the Shrew. Quite a story. See, everybody in town knew she would never get married because she was such a terror. So that's why everybody came to. Horrified that she got married.
Oh yeah, Jimmy and Roz.
They should.
Well, maybe they should put Roz and Jimmy. It would seem more polite.
She'd have gotten more votes, bro.
You want Roz?
Roz. Us insiders.
On Saturday Night Live last night, you watched it? They had, it said some blind man touched Mrs. Jimmy's mother's face.
Swelling.
And what did they say? He thought that he touched what?
A blind man touched her face and or something.
That's what.
Oh, I can't remember. Oh, it's terrible to start a joke.
I can't remember.
Did it have to do with how wrinkled she was?
Yeah, some of those shells. That was part of my job.
Yeah. Dangerous job. How did you defuse one of those?
He's not too tough.
I remember I had this stuff.
One day the the forward first aid station was in a little gravel car, and the medicos all dug holes straight into the sides, the box holes, you know. One came down. They had the regimental, the battalion doctor came down. He was inside. It stayed right in the mouth of his hole. I got this urgent call to come over and rescue this guy. I looked in there, he wasn't there with a shell in between. He was horrified it was going to go off, and there wasn't much chance it was going to go off. He couldn't get out for about 6 hours. I got him. The hole was about this big around. He was back there sleeping. The palm didn't go off. It go off.
Well, what happened?
Pulled the fuse on the damn thing. Sometimes you didn't even have to pull it. They only had a certain set. The worst thing was
And he slithered off.
using
And then
booby
the
traps.
shoe tied back
Slithered
up
off.
again.
Really, a woman could
But
use.
they had we
So
had
then,
models of them in advance on how to take them
It was
apart.
like,
Yeah, there were no.
They all have a
no
little
hands or
mechanism
anything.
about that
real
big,
shoes.
one type or another,
And then all of a sudden, the female shoe.
and how they can be
They go like this. Baby shoe.
And
deactivated.
then
They can't get too damn tricky
they
with that.
cut the string.
They make them-
Then the baby shoe come out and pop from the daddy's.
And then
I could use that in sex education.
It was either a release mechanism or a pull wire mechanism.
Probably get shoes.
Baby shoe.
It was kind of shaky, you know.
It's like in those, you see what's
They
I
have a lot
went
of,
in the cellar one time. I was trying to get the guy in the cellar, and
Oh, yeah.
the door was booby trapped. I went to try the back door, and it stuck. When I was stuck, I felt this thing hit my head like this.
Bizarre, absurd things.
Finally got my light around. It was a big grenade
My favorite
bouncing
one was
against
how
my
they
head,
oh,
waiting for me to open the door. This door stuck, and it had a wire hitched to the door, a cable. And I got a pair of wire cutters, and I went to cut it, and it slipped in between the palm. It slipped in between the two pieces. I was in there holding it. And I couldn't let go because I thought the weight would send it off, but it wouldn't cut it. And the hell all the time.
Oh, I have.
I had to holler and yell at some guy to get me another pair of cutters. Finally got it cut. But after I'd cut it, see, when it, you know how those poultry shears will slip and the meat get in between instead of being cut. Well, that's what happened to the wire. It was in between. And I figured if I let go, the weight of it would set the grenade off. I mean, I was standing there like that, like, what the hell to do? This thing swinging back and forth.
oh.
Well, just put the bid to do that for anybody who do probably.
No, that would be.
Well, tell that story to Bill about
Moral.
what happened to Dave, Towson Plaza. It's a wonderful. Listen to the further adventures of Dave, Bill. Remember?
Bill, you certainly missed a lot of good practice on this case that I tried to
Dave,
give
I
you.
was talking about it dinner the other night. He finally did call back.
Let me fill it in real quick. This is a guy who's walking off the street because he wants to stay.
No money,
No money.
no place to stay.
Here, goes Dad.
And they took him in or he just came in, right?
No, he came around here the other night and Bo gave him $10.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
You did? You gave him
And he
10
appeared the night before last again. No.
Yeah.
4 or 5 nights ago he appeared. It was about like this.
It was on New Year's
5
Eve
degrees
when
warmer.
he first appeared. New Year's Eve.
And he said he's going to freeze to death, so he had no place to go. So finally, afraid he'd freeze to death in front lawn. Took him up to the motel in Taos. I think he says have about $10 for food after I paid his 20. That's a little crazy. I didn't hear from him. I told him the next day, give my office his mailing address. He said he couldn't get his Social Security. He's on disability. He's crazy. Because he didn't have any permanent address. He was too dumb to give anybody his mailing address. So I give him the address, and I didn't hear from him for days. I figured, well, finally he got my Social Security. But he called up last night.
He did?
About 9:30, and he was over at Towson Plaza, ready to freeze to death again. So I suggested he come over here. Oh, my feet aren't too bad. So I'd go up there. I said, you're in Towson Plaza, what part? Towson Plaza, he says, Towson Plaza. Upstairs or downstairs? Downstairs, he said. Well, I limp over there cursing under my breath. I have to go in and he's sound asleep on the bench with his mouth open straight up in the air, you know.
Should have probably just tiptoed away.
I should have. He was the worst looking thing I've ever seen. He had a little paper bag next to him that only there as long as I wake him up. Come on, Dad, I'm going to take you to a warm room. Where are you taking me? Yeah, I said, just get up. It's a nice warm place. You ought to take my word. He said, you're going to freeze to death. Well, I got to know where I'm going first.
Real picky, it's so good.
Yeah, I got to know where I'm going. So come on, I'm still standing there, and people are glaring at this derelict. I'm getting
Shoppers.
I probably think it's my father or something.
Or your son.
Or your son.
Well, he just said, wait a minute, I got to put on my boots. The bag's about this big. That's all he has in the world. That's it. When 4 is in snow out. The car's parked right at the curb. Finally, I could visit. There was no snow. Well, he said, what kind of place you take us? Hamden. He said, can't you get me a place in Baltimore County?
No. No.
I said, gee, that's great. And he gets in. He said, what kind of place is it? I said, it's a nice, warm place. You'll be fine. Well, I don't know whether I can sleep there or not. So what kind of place do you have to have that sleeps? What else could be wrong? It's warm, it's comfortable, it's got running water, it's got time. I said, the walls may be too thin. People make a lot of noise. I can't sleep. I want to get a good night's sleep. This time I'm really raving. What else did he have to say on the way down? I forget.
About the Jewish.
Oh, that wasn't until today.
Oh.
You saw him today?
I get him down there, and poor Dick Price had just moved out of this place. It's spotless.
Dick Price?
Yeah, he's spotless. Housekeeper. And things shown, everything's shown. And he said, well, it does look pretty clean. It smells awful dusty.
Jesus.
He says, where's the bathroom? I said, right up the steps, top of the steps.
Was this
Up the steps!
guy nicely groomed?
He shaked his head a few times. I said, well, you're going to have to sleep down. I don't want you to go upstairs at all, except to the bathroom. You have to sleep on the sofa. Feels pretty hard to me. So we'll sleep on the floor. He had about 8 blankets. And then he bitched about this and bitched about that. Finally, I left in a fury. Went over there today. Oh, I had 2 cans of those glass pork and beans, this fancy kind, and about a half of a fruit cake, about this big. Here's, it's 10 o'clock at night. Here's some beans and some fruit cake. He said, beans? I said, you son of a bitch. If you're hungry, you'll eat the beans.
You should have taken up some brown sugar. I wouldn't consider it brown sugar.
Is there any coffee here? I said, yeah, here's your coffee. So he finally agreed to accept my hospitality. I kept telling him, you can always go out there and freeze to death if you don't like it. Well, it looked like I didn't have much choice, didn't it? I said, that's right. So he's sort of a caricature of a Hebrew. And he's got a great long nose, about a mile long. He puts his stocking cap on it and he peers like this at you. The day I went in, I called that social worker in Towson, who of course won't be on duty anymore. But I asked some other people that knew him, and they said, call the Jewish Charities, because I think he's been on their case list before. I went in today, I said, Dave, you've been in contact with the social worker at Jewish Charities, haven't you? Oh, yeah, you mean Buttons? Yeah, sure, I've been there half my life. I said, why don't you go to him and get him to fix up this mess with your Social Security? He says, I don't like Jews.
I know somebody like that. Schleifer.
He's almost incredible. He keeps on doing this. Everything you say to him, he hits you right on the head.
Yeah.
I can only think of half of it.
There's no way you can please a guy.
No way. And this morning he announced he did. I said, well, you got your Social Security straightened out. I'm only going to keep you one more night. And you're on your own. When I give you the Social Security, I never want to see you again. I can't stand you.
Get out of my life.
So that's your trouble. You insist on antagonizing everybody that wants to help you. And that's why you're in such a desperate shape.
What do you say?
But you've got your Social Security. So I don't have any Social Security. He just told me you're getting $650 a month. That's not Social Security. He says, if I had $200 million, I'd still be unhappy. I said, you mean you want me to furnish happiness for you? Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
And that's what he wanted. He wants somebody to come along and make him completely happy
Do it all for me.
because of his illness.
Which is what exactly?
But his illness is he can't say anything but the wrong thing.
Well, he's
There's
either,
a compulsion to do that.
he's either character disorder or schizophrenic. For my labels, that's what
Doesn't really matter.
It must be some kind of
No,
defense,
it's
you know, because nobody could do this even deliberately as well as he does it.
He should just be shot and hung.
He's so sick
Here
that
you
nobody
have
is ever going to take his case.
Ron's social worker.
Shot and hung, haven't hung and shot.
That's right.
See, I'm trying to get in
Seems kind of
somewhere.
redundant, Phil.
Have him-
I think
have
that'd be a waste of the taxpayers' money to both shoot him and hang him.
Yeah, hang him and try
The
him.
title of that book has
Hang him and
me.
then try him so he doesn't make a lot of noise during the trial.
That prescribed book we're talking about has,
Your hair's growing,
in the
too.
title is the word man.
Well, just give me
Some
one
kind
last
of
second.
man.
Oh, yeah.
Her hair's growing. No, it isn't.
My hair is
It's
growing.
never gonna be any longer, Bill.
You call that man?
My hair always grows.
Mine, if you cut it off an inch, it grows back that inch, but it has a maximum.
Can you order some pretzels?
No, I'm full. I ate a rabbit and a pheasant tonight. Rabbit and a pheasant, and I ate a rat. From the Dead Rat Cafe. That's right. Dave, he could be my first case. I consulted with him. McCaffrey's here.
He would be the worst thing you've ever seen.
The worst?
Driven everybody to the wall.
But $650 a month for doing nothing from Social Security, I could retire on that kind of money. Boy,
Oh, those people who get Social Security, they make out well.
that's
From
perfectly
disability.
adequate amount of
I
money
think
for a
he's
single
taking
person.
three
That you could live
charities,
very
too.
comfortably on.
Yeah.
And what?
$650 a month
Oh my God.
for one person.
Lord, yeah.
He could
Well, he
buy
was
a
operating
car.
a car because I think the Jewish charity probably fixed him up. He was operating a fairly good car until he decided he wanted to have tires.
Did you hear about that? You heard about
I heard about the
that guy in
tires.
York Road on his rims.
Yeah. And the cops stopped him, and he didn't know why the cops stopped him.
All you could see was a bastard red spark.
And he was mad at the cop for stopping him. What did I do wrong?
Only
I'm going to recognize this guy if I ever see him. What that
Now,
You know-
are you sitting in my private? I was right next to
There
you.
it
Never
is.
mind.
okay.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Well, you should be skating with us today. It's pretty rugged.
Well, it sounded like it was cold.
I didn't see the book right.
Cold
off.
as-
But some man.
Say hello.
Hello.
What's up, Mickey?
I think this is to Mr. Whiskey. Say hello, Mr. Whiskey.
Mr. Whiskey? What
What
am I, your puppet? Say hello, Mr. Whiskey.
Rebellious woman, isn't she? Mr. Whiskey, alias the Nest.
I don't know who the nest is.
Alias, the Sponge.
Does he mooch a lot?
No, but he let lacrosse balls go in goal a lot. Who could this be?
Stony?
No, not Stony.
And she felt sorry for him and told him
Head.
to use her house
Hi, Head.
mailing address.
Sorry I didn't,
Got so insulted.
sorry I didn't get up and say goodbye the other morning.
Never call up. So now he's got his check.
Lazy Linda. When it comes to the morning, her priority is sleep. Or any other selfish little thing she might think of. Like sex. Whatever.
That's how he screws things up.
Or coffee.
One step ahead.
Mr. Coffee. And of course, the Reds. The Reds are always.
Okay, get
Coffee and rest.
Coffee and rest.
Primary importance.
Well, I
That's
still
Bill
think
said they did, you know,
you
stuff
can still go down there yourself and
Well,
pick it up. I still
I'll
think
put you
that's
back to the reality of this
They don't
But
room.
have
now
to
he
mail
has
it
no
to you.
identification because he still hasn't got his
He lost his identification because when he got
Left it
evicted,
with the cops or something.
they told
That's
me I
what he's
wouldn't do
saying.
That just seems ridiculous too, that the cops took his ID. I don't know what kind of ID he has. He's never driver's license.
that. Well, they probably got his fingerprints somewhere in the police department by this time. Bound to have been involved in trouble.
Well, that is, I mean, two people froze
I
to death
thought
in
he'd been
Raleigh the
picked
night
up for
before we came
vagrancy.
up
They
here.
did.
They do.
What? In
Yeah,
Raleigh?
sure they do.
And Raleigh's not even the coldest city going by any means.
They
People always
froze to
think
death
they do.
in Raleigh?
I mean, these are people who don't live anywhere. They live in the streets. Cold weather comes on, a couple of them get killed every year.
Yeah, they're always freezing to death down now.
You know, when I was first in New York, I was with Nancy Falls. I was walking around there. I had gotten acclimated to all the horrors you can see in New York. And now, you know, then I learned shortly after that never to ask any questions you're going to get. Here's something terrible for the answer. But I was walking around, it was a hot day. And you just wanted to take off everything you could. It was boiling hot. We were walking through some part of the city, and there were, you know, several women in this one part of the city walking around with big coats on and boots and stockings and all this. And I said, my God, why do they have all those clothes on? What kind of a disease can they have that they feel cold in this kind of weather or what? And she said, no, those are bag ladies, and you know, they have to wear that stuff all year because they don't have any place else to put it. They don't live anywhere. So they wear their clothes all year.
Or you just
Yeah,
carry it in
that's
your
all.
bag.
You know, or else they take it off.
You never see them carrying it because, you know, it's
They
weird.
wear it, and it's 90 degrees. Then when it's 10, it isn't warm enough.
All this guy had on was a medium light windbreaker.
Freezing out there. Is he down in your place again?
Yeah.
How'd you work? Did you give him the key, or doesn't he have
No, I took the key.
I was gonna say, what would you do? Give him the key.
No, no key.
He might decide he didn't think it was so bad after all.
Oh,
Get
yeah.
himself an extra key made. I could just see this one.
Where did Dick go?
Dick moved out to Panama.
Did he?
Let it out of his house. I'm gonna go at that again. He's got a kid that's running disturbed.
It's going berserk.
The kid that has a hard time the most. Is on pot right now. And a lot of hard drugs.
Next time you see Dave, you ought to say to him that, you know, you just learn that Dave has the best idea of what's best for him, and that he's probably better off just going around and finding his best place to live. So he seems to have the best idea where he should live. Let him find it.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Here's your map.
Well, that's all right till they appear, you know, at 9 or 10 o'clock at night like this.
I have no place to go.
And he ain't gonna last the next morning to find out. I don't think this guy would know if he could froze to death.
Yeah, I don't see how these things don't happen to social workers. Don't they happen to people in your position, or do people never find out
You mean
where
people
you
social
live?
work?
Yeah.
Why?
Don't characters show up on social workers' doorsteps in off hours and cause a problem and show up on Saturday?
But a good social worker will prevent that.
How?
By trying.
By hiding, by moving every 2 weeks.
By not giving their address or keeping their name out of the book and finding alternatives for them.
You get overwhelmed, I guess.
But that I'm just fooling around because there's some people you just can't do anything with. They just accept any kind of help.
Well, I contacted the social worker Friday, and she was pleasant enough with the phone. So we're closed till Monday. So there you are.
Sorry.
You know, it's 5 degrees.
No, all of these social services work 9 to 5. That's the thing. Crises don't happen between.
Yeah, but in most big towns there are crisis
Centers.
Crisis centers.
Where,
Most people don't know where they are.
And they should be able to.
Like that social worker should have been able to recommend something.
Yeah. The police department should know that.
Well, she said it's a last resort. They'll put them in a motel, but they don't like that.
I suppose you could have called the police.
I guess they'll
told
stay
you
for
what
her.
to do.
He'd been in the hands of the police about 8 times, and they had the police take him over to GBMC for something. And they examined him, said nothing wrong with the eye. Then he wandered off again. And I think the police probably ought to take him down to the mission. But that's not good enough for Davies. Under the board and all these raving drunks.
That's right. That's why he should just go out and find his own place.
But even then, in the meantime, he's going to freeze to death, you know.
Yeah.
He'll do everything he can to make himself freeze to death.
Really, some guy, what he'll probably end up doing is hurt himself so badly they'll put him in the hospital.
That's all.
Because that's.
Well, I think he's been through the course
Is that
of study. He
something
wasn't
new?
quite nutty enough to put in Spring
Yeah.
Grove.
They say if you're harmful to yourself or to other people, then you should be in the hospital.
That's what they can't prove on him yet.
Yeah, but if he stays out and freezes himself all night.
Probably some social worker got him his last apartment. Now he's been evicted. Being repulsive.
About a year ago.
Well, is that, Bill, is that par for the course, being disagreeable, repulsive like this guy's?
Yeah, yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
For that, it's like it's they kind of do the opposite of what they want, because like if they accept help, then they'll either feel like they're obligated, or they feel like they would start getting close to people and they're afraid of that. Who knows? It's a lot of different psychological.
It's some way he maintains an image by being arrogant about everything. I don't think he could control himself. But terrible things he said
Yeah,
turn you against him.
that's true.
That's the place I stayed during the war, Paul, for 3 months.
What is
Clarence,
that?
down in Cornwall.
What is it?
Clarence.
In Germany?
Minor. No, it's in England.
No, but is it a hospital or what?
No, it was a country estate. I don't think that
Oh.
after the war people ever lived in it again.
Were you in the army?
Yeah.
This guy Dave last night, where he was
They put us in gorgeous estates in there. Gorgeous.
Were you in combat?
Yeah.
Infantry?
He was
Yeah.
bobbing down the road and hadn't really thought about this first completely.
In Germany?
Yeah. I was in this local 29th division. They went all the way through Normandy. Germany.
How long did you stay there?
But
I mean,
the infantry,
that about the guy.
altogether, it was 5 years.
So you were there throughout the entire war?
Yeah, we came in on D-Day.
See, somebody
Did
like
it?
that, they scare
And I
me
get
because
comfortably
you're so
wounded.
irrational.
Not too long
But
afterwards.
you don't know if
Spent
they
a
were
couple months in the
or
hospital and
something
went
really
back again.
crazy.
You went back again?
Yeah. Up to the Elk River.
What happened there?
Well, everybody wanted to surrender to us because they were afraid of the Russian.
Really?
That's where I got a hold of pepper pistol.
Jeez.
Did any units surrender to you specifically?
Oh,
Or
hell
some?
yeah, they were. We only had two little skiffs, rowboats going across. I was dying to get across and get some of the really good cameras or something. It was a whole damn German corps. It was marvelous. I was holding up my hand. I went to the whole end of the line. It must have been about 5 miles in because I had a bicycle. I got off one of the Germans. And I was holding up my hands and having them throw their arms down. They were scared to death. The Russians were after them. They wanted to threaten with the Yanks. And I had this great pile of cameras that got higher and a great pile of binoculars. All I was his bicycle. And a great pile of pistols. And I'm holding up my hand, feeling more and more like a hero. It's only American within 10 miles, and I'm holding up my hand. And pretty soon this bunch of horses come charging down the road. The road, you could only use the road because there were really dikes, because it was all marshy meadows on each side. The roads were completely jammed, except on the other side of the German army where I was. And they charged down, and right behind them were a bunch of camels. They would have ridden right over me. I jumped off the damn dike. I looked up and suddenly realized they were Russians. Holding up my head to stop the Russian army. They had camels. I thought, my God, I've got DTs. But that's when I gathered everything that I could on I got a belt and tied a lot of belts. I could grab belts off Germans and everything else. And loop all these pistols and cameras. And bicycles and put them on the bicycle. And I had to push it. It was so heavy. But it was getting late. And I knew the boat was going to, they wouldn't run after dark. Because, of course, nobody wanted to be in the middle of 40,000 Germans, or maybe 100,000. I don't know. But I kept throwing pistols and cameras away, and it was killing me. So I finally got a German armored carrier and put all my loot on it, and got this lieutenant go out in the river meadow. He didn't want to do that because he was afraid his tank would sink. But I was terrified I was going to get caught when it slit my throat. So across the marshes we started, and it had about 30 or 40 Germans on top of this thing. I was down under the armor part, and they were all clinging to it so they could surrender, the Americans too. But those meadows were a marsh, and they grazed them a little bit. About every quarter of a mile they had a barbed wire fence. I kept seeing these posts pop up way in the distance. What the hell? So I thought it was shells landing first, because a lot of shells around that time. And I realized there were fence posts. All of a sudden I heard this terrible outcry. We'd run through a couple of fences, and they just stretched. The tank kept right on going, and these posts would pop up. So as far as you could see in the distance, all of a sudden a whole bunch of the wire went over the top of that tank. Scraped the whole 30 or 40 people off. Christ knows what happened to the poor devil. And the way they went like a slingshot. The wire wrapped around. And then finally the tank got stuck in the middle of the marsh, and I had to take the bicycle again.
You were
But
driving
about 1/20th of all the lovely loot I had. I got the boat just as it was pulling out too.
How'd you get all the loot out of Europe and back home? Did nobody ever hassle you about the stuff you collected? You didn't have to pay duty on any of this stuff.
Well, I had to give most of the pistols away anyway, guys. Outfit. But I had about 20 or 30 of them, I guess. And I mailed a lot of stuff I never thought it would get here. I would mail a lot more if I'd known it. I mailed some shotguns. I thought, oh, they'll never get there. I wrapped them up in German uniforms, tied string around them. And it was illegal, they claim, but the damn stuff went through.
What?
Better than it does today. But I don't know about it.
God.
Some people were taking apart German boats and sending them home piece by piece. I don't know whatever happened to them.
Where were you wounded?
Right near St. Lo, the other side of St. Lo.
I mean, did you get shot or?
Yeah, I got shot in the leg. Nice vacation in the hospital.
Yeah, I guess if you gotta get shot, that's a good place to get shot.
You had to get shot to get out of that pit, I'll tell you. Everybody got shot.
Really?
They had to pull the rifle companies had most all the casualties, of course, in the division. And there's 9,000 men in the 3 rifle regiments. They had 24,000 casualties, so you figure what your chances were.
Jesus.
Out of actually 9,000 people fighting, they had 24,000 casualties.
Huh?
Well, they kept turning them over.
Where's St. Lo in France?
Yeah, that was the big junction. That was really
In the north of France?
the objective of the whole beach invasion of St. Lo. No, it's in,
East.
It's in
West.
it's in Normandy. It's not too. Cherbourg is on the Cotentin Peninsula, and this is a little further in than Cherbourg.
So shortly after D-Day?
Yeah, it's a big road junction. They couldn't move. The Third Army wasn't allowed to move, so we took Cherbourg. So this is 6 weeks to take it. We almost took it the first 2 days, and then we ran it.
You were in Patton's army? You were in Patton's army?
I was in the First Army and the Ninth Army.
Good story.
I thought that Patton came up from the bottom.
He did.
Spain
That's where we landed.
From Italy.
Oh, he didn't come up from Italy now.
Yeah.
No, he landed on the
bottom
beachhead.
of the
After
front.
we got the beachhead, they landed the Third Army on our beachhead. After we'd gotten in almost to St. Lo. They
Wasn't it
landed
at the south of the front, though? Or wasn't he south of the rest of them? Did he go south?
No, so actually we were south of Paris, where Cherbourg was south. It's actually south of Paris, southwest, and that's where the invasion started. And when he didn't bring in all his stuff and it was scheduled till we could take Cherbourg, because that was a great road junction. He only went up the road, so we had to. That's where most of the casualties of the war occurred, actually trying to clear the way for Patton. And I didn't get shot till he went through, and then we had to protect his flanks. The Germans were trying to close in on the road that we were supposed to guard. We'd already had about 10,000 casualties. So when he went zipping through so gallantly, he went up, a cleared road. And they said, well, don't let anybody cut the road. And the Germans, which is the classic military maneuver, they wanted us to cut him off. So they made a major effort to get in behind. They sent all kinds of tanks and what the hell ever they had in the world. We didn't know it was going to be that bad. We thought it was going to be restful. It was terrible. It was cowboys and Indians. Nobody knew where the hell the Germans were and where the friendly troops were. And you didn't know which way to walk. You'd walk into a German.
Were you a private?
No, I was a captain by that time.
Were you?
So you weren't involved in that mess that went up into Holland? Did you do that?
No, we could see a lot of that action with the planes going over there because we were just on the right flank of it.
You were going due east?
We were on the Ruhr River near Aachen.
Yeah.
And they were just up on the left, small section.
What was that fiasco at the Arnhem Bridge because Patton and what was the other guys? What general?
British.
It was
Montgomery.
Montgomery.
Were having a race to get in.
Oh, it was just an open sea goddamn planet. It was the same kind of country where the Germans surrendered on. It was nothing but the roads were dikes. On each side, you couldn't move any kind of a vehicle.
The road's jammed.
Yeah, and even a little road, little bit of traffic would jam it right up.
And everything depended on them going up the road very quickly and getting every bridge real fast.
And it was so easy to block that it was pitiful.
And all the refugees got on the road.
All you had to do was stop one vehicle and the whole damn army stopped. Until they got that thing out of the way. If you knocked over a couple of them, they couldn't get at it to move it.
And they had dropped parachute guys way ahead who were just trying to hang on for 1 or 2 days till the army came to help them.
But they had no place to
couldn't
move.
hang on.
They had to be somewhere
They were behind the lines.
where it was dry, and that was in between these sort of river meadows. They were really all the big rivers, the Rhine and the Elbe, and some of the Dutch rivers come in there. It really was just a vast swamp once. You can graze maybe cows in there, but you can't take anything in there. You just sink right down.
Can't graze tanks.
It's just impossible. It's a kind of place that you can take a few strategic companies even and guard a tremendous district because they've got to come up and down the road, and you can see them for miles and miles and miles. And what the Germans used to do is fix a real secure gun emplacement or a pillbox and put concrete on the top of it. Then they'd zero in on all the strategic places on the road and write the coordinates of their gun on the wall and fire it without ever even looking. At any spot they wanted to hit, they already knew exactly what was happening on the beach, really. They had Germans 4 or 5 miles back on these pillboxes. We're sitting there on the beach and there's no way to shoot at them. They didn't even have to expose themselves. They didn't have to look out of the slits. All they had to do was know that we were on the beach. Anybody could tell them. They probably had some observers up there, I'm sure. But they in turn were encased in concrete with a little slit about that big. They're at point number 3. And they point number 3, 67 by 56 millimeters, set it on things, set the gun off. There you were.
There you stayed.
There you stayed, and you wonder, my God, who are we going to shoot at?
So there weren't Germans to shoot at when you got on the beach, huh?
Well, there were a lot of Germans on a cliff. I thought it was some kind of a Christmas garden coming in the boat because I looked up and there were 2 waves of 115th gone in ahead of us, and they got this thing sent in the infantry. This war ruined all our plans. I look up on this landing craft I was in. These soldiers are marching like a little parade up and down the cliffs. I said, "This is real." We're supposed to go in there. What happened to all the rest of the guys that went in? And they're marching along in very good order. So this is crazy. Right along the top of the cliff. And yeah, I saw these little splashes in the water. I didn't catch on for a minute. A couple of them hit the boat and rolled off. And they were spent machine guns that these guys were shooting at. But they were so tired that they just hit the side of the boat and dropped in the water. We were getting closer and closer. The closer we got, the harder they hit the side of the boat. Everybody had to lay down the bottom.
I would have stayed too. We got out of that boat. I'm going swimming.
How much did you know about the plan for D-Day before you went? I mean, how far in advance did you know?
Oh
What's
my
going
God,
on?
we had the most elaborate plans. We didn't know where we were going, but if you were on the staff, I was on the staff for some obscure reason, a special staff officer, you were shown a terrain map about, I guess, twice the size of this room, with all the hills and all the gun emplacements, farmhouses, gates, what kind of trees they were. Every little last thing on it, even the little paths and where they had machine guns, everything. Marvelous map. And our objective was to parade the Cerise, the cherry orchard. Boy, that's a nice objective, you know. It was about 12 miles in. And the only thing we ever got was send in your infantry. We went in the opposite direction. Never saw the damn forest or went near it. It was complete confusion. What had happened was it had it all pinned down with the German positions and everything else, except that the Germans had decided to send down a whole division of troops for training maneuvers that they didn't know about. And they got there 2 days before we did. And instead of being a normal garrison complement on these pillboxes, there's a whole damn division of infantry sitting there. And they were the guys that were shooting with machine guns and rifles. But the other beaches didn't have that. It turned out the way that it was planned, and they had a very hard time.
Well, what Sue wanted to know was how long before D-Day did you know what you were going to do? You were sitting there waiting to take off. How long did you know? Is that what you asked me?
Yeah, I thought it was a great big secret. Nobody knew about it till 5 minutes before you got there.
3 weeks before, they put us in they moved us to a place near Dartmouth and put us in a big barbed wire enclosure. And nobody could go in or out without a special pass. Well, these guys had no communication, supposedly. A lot of stuff leaked out, I'm sure. The Germans were still wrong, but they...
Is that when you knew that you were going?
That 3 weeks. Oh, yeah, well, we were going. They stuck us in this barbed wire, and they started.
That's what she wanted.
There's only one place to
They
go.
fed us white bread and
wasn't home.
And real eggs. We knew we were in for something.
You were being fattened for the slaughter.
And then Montgomery came up and spoke to our battalion. And he said, well, yikes, he said, take off your helmets. You all look alike in that. You take them off so I can talk to you. We thought that was very nice. He was a real showman. Now he said there's a rumor that you men who are going to land on the beach, he said, you know that now. He said there's a rumor here that there'll be 90% casualties on the beach. He said, don't believe that blather. He said there won't be more than 1/3. That was the tear that we meant it.
Comforted him.
More than 1/3?
That wasn't 1/3 casualties.
Did he meet?
How long did they keep you sitting in the barbed wire fence before you took off?
Huh?
How long did they keep you before you got a landing?
3 weeks.
Oh. Well, you knew all 3 weeks.
I could get out because I was responsible for a lot of ammunition
just
flying.
Anyway.
We didn't have all our Bangalore torpedoes. I was running up and down the coast looking for Bangalore torpedoes that somehow had gone astray. We didn't have those. We couldn't get in the pillboxes. They were all on the beach and they'd forgotten about it. Oh, I guess 2 hours before we took off, I finally got them.
Was that the whole of your army was in that one barbed wire place?
Oh, the others were in, a lot of them had only been in England for a little while. They didn't know where they were anyway. We'd been there for 2 years already. And I guess they did the same thing the others are. Damn fine.
You did?
They must have. But only, there were only 2 divisions landing there. It wasn't the 1st Division and our division. And then the 3rd Division was down below, so it wasn't like it was the whole army. There was only a total of people that landed. There were only a total of about 30,000, I guess. And the first wave that went in was...
Oh, it wasn't a whole army.
No, they went in by battalion. First 900 men went in on their outfit. Then another 900, another 900. If they ever got in, a lot of them never got in.
How many did get in? Did you ever find out?
Well, of the first 2 battalions that went in, they took them days to find the remnants of that. Most of them got killed at the beach. They blew a lot up in the water, too, because they had mines on these. They look like big jacks, tetrahedrons, they call them. You know, they have an 18-foot tide there. And they stick these up to impale the landing craft. Besides that, they put mines on all the ends of them. And the boat we were coming in on, we'd gotten off of this big troop carrier about 10 or 12 miles out, and we got into this landing craft. We came in and he charged. Engineers were supposed to remove 6 or 7 lanes, 8 lanes actually through these. There weren't any lanes, you couldn't find any. Because they were all a jumble of torn up boats and bodies and Christ knows what I mean. But I just saw a hole. He'd been looking for it because he'd been in once before. He found it and he went full speed ahead for this hole to get, he wanted to get in, get the hell out of there. But another boat that was not far away saw it too, and he beat the guy in. The whole damn thing was about, I guess, 50 feet in front. And he hit a mine and whoop.
Does it would look
We were going through this town of Iceni. It's right off the beach. They made camembert cheese. And you walk through the towns, and the Germans were shooting out of some of the big high towers. They had snipers, church towers and whatnot. And the whole town was burning. And it was burning, and so full of rubble that you had to walk through with no vehicles getting through. The tanks couldn't get through. I walked up to talk to some major about what the hell, who goes where and whatnot. And I started back, and he called me back. The wall fell down where I've been standing. And the blazes were shooting up, but it was too spectacular to be real. It really was. All I kept thinking, oh my God, this is worse than Hollywood. I don't know why you'd get that impression, but it was so exaggerated.
Yeah.
Everything was so exaggerated that you could only relate it to some made up thing.
I bet it was real loud too.
Well, it was so much fun. You couldn't believe it.
So how many days was it until you got some peace? Like, until you could actually sit down and relax?
It was over a while. Because when you first got off the beach, they didn't know where the Germans were, and the Germans didn't know where we were, and you'd run into them in any given spot. So they got scattered out in the confusion. And they had a lot of garrison troops. There were some Germans, but there were a lot of Poles, a lot of Russians. We started to run into these people that were Chinese, the GIs. We didn't know what the hell to think of them. There's a lot of Chinese around, and they were Mongols.
They were Russians.
They were Mongols, and they were completely Asiatic, and they spoke some lingo that Russian interpreters said, this isn't Russian.
They've been captured from.
How do we end up in this strange Hollywood situation fighting the Chinese? You know, I would say, you'd ask him where the hell the CP, the headquarters, was. Go down that path and turn where the dead Chinaman is. And there were, the dead Chinaman was always seemed to be sort of a direction, because a lot of them weren't Chinese, so you turn where the dead Chinaman is. And those poor guys, they couldn't understand why we didn't immediately give them our arms and they'd fight the Germans. Because they'd been doing this for generations, ever since Genghis Khan. Whoever took you captive in war, you fought for them. And some hated a bunch of the officers we had trouble. We could talk about, this is all for interpreters. They finally get somebody to do it. But they really meant it. That's what they done for the Germans. The Germans captured them from the Russian army, and they say, okay, we'll fight for you. That's the custom.
For them to have been in the Russian army in the first place was a joke.
Yeah.
They didn't have any point being any place.
No, they didn't know they didn't know where they were. They had the vaguest idea what they were doing, but they did know from ages past that that's the way it worked. That you fought for the guy who was winning. They took you prisoner, and that's the way you did it. And the Germans knew this.
The models got so far back in their day.
The trick was the Germans understood this, and they were able to use them as garrison troops. They weren't much good as shock troops, because they didn't like to run at you too badly. They shoot as long as it was reasonable to shoot. When it got tough, they'd quit. That wasn't too bad. They said, this wasn't going to be so bad as we thought. And we got in about halfway to St. Louis, we ran into the damn German paratroopers. And they were vicious bastards. You had to keep your head down all the time. They'd shoot you up. That's when the war stalemated for a little while. But when we saw the Chinese, my God, we're in the wrong country. We got here 3 years of training. We landed in the wrong country. Poor dead Chinaman.
Must have been a shock, though. A bunch of Chinamen.
We were so confused anyway, because you didn't know who was shooting at you or what the hell was going on, or which was the front even. And then they had these Asiatic guys suddenly pop up, but you had no idea we're in the world.
It's too much. We gotta go.
Oh, me, I guess tomorrow's a working day.
Come down there.
Sure, sometime.
I'll be down. You recall. We'll charge you. It's this time.
It won't charge you. No, we don't charge you.
Better on what happened later. Very upset, but her makeup's nice.
Yeah, they always keep it in shape.
Weren't Germans expecting a landing on a different beach than which they moved all their fortifications to?
Yeah, there was considerable confusion. This was one of the main places they had locked up, but they made a feint above Dover on the big thing. And where they made their big mistake was they didn't know where to put their reserve, their shock. What they had on the defense was they had a long line of garrison troops along the coast, and they had their elite paratroopers and shock troops back, and their tank corps in back. And they sent their armored divisions north instead of south. They knocked us right off the beach. It wasn't they didn't have plenty of men to guard, but to keep us from really making a landing, they had to commit their shock troops. And they committed them. Hitler was going buggy then. He committed them up towards the Netherlands. Rommel wanted to bring him down there, and he wouldn't do it. And they stalled around, and they couldn't be sure. And then they went that bad weather came up, we weren't on land. They knew this all stuff. You couldn't have missed it.
Doesn't sound like it'd be too difficult to miss.
It was impossible. Christ, it was only, 30 to 60 miles across the channel, and every port was jammed with boats and supplies to transport a couple million people. Christ, nobody could miss it. They had 1 million German spies. Like, I think the intelligence planted as many false rumors. So many rumors were planted, obviously, which was the main event in any war. You give so much false information out that you don't know which one to believe, finally. And Hitler was still in his raving stage, not trying to look in his crystal eyes. But anyway, it fooled them. They had a whole dummy fleet up north, and they conducted big bombing forays not too far from Dover, as if they were going to go in there. They had a big demonstration.
Did you run any Panzers on anywhere near the beach, or were they more back? They diverted elsewhere. Where they arrested a lot of their Panzer divisions somewhere.
Yeah, they had tanks attached to the infantry. And the Panzer division tried to. That's when I finally got wounded. One night I went up to try to rifle grenade what I thought was one tank on the crossroads. But it knocked off 4 of my ammunition trucks. There were buildings on the crossroads, and this tank was shooting across it. We were supposed to go down the road. He kept knocking the back wheels off the truck. I had a couple of drinks, and I figured I'm not going to get that bastard with the rifle grenade. And I got up real close to where the tank was, creeping along with my little rifle grenade. And I don't know whether they saw me or what, but a bunch of little German planes that weren't I swear they weren't as big as Piper Cubs, came right over the field at 200 feet and dropped all these flares, and I'm standing there in broad daylight. And there were 8 tanks. I'm standing there. God, they opened up, and the tanks dropped. They saw me. It was just a bare field. And they dropped all these personnel grenades. They're like bunches of grapes. They dropped them in string, boom, boom, boom. And one was going this way, and the other was going that way. And the other was crisscrossing. I knew I was dead. And I got down as flat as I could, and just a little depression from the shell hole. It wasn't much. I knew damn well I was dead. That's a damn not gonna add. What if I can say to God is I can't say anything. It's too late now. I think I'm ever. And for some damn reason, those damn things that were shooting dirt and gravel was going all over the place. And the damn grenades would come right up to the edge. And if you're right flat on the ground, they practically got to hit you with one. And they didn't. And they dumped them all. All they had flew away. And then the guys in the tank, I guess, thought I was dead. I was just laying out there. When the flares went out, I got the hell out of there so fast. I thought I was after one little.
I can't say it.
There's 8 tanks. I'm sitting there attacking. Oh my God, I feel. I guess I drank too much.
I don't do that every night. I can't set it.
But then when I got back to the dam, I told my Jeep driver he didn't have to come with me at all. About halfway up the road, if he dig me a hole with me, because we didn't know where the hell the Germans were on both sides of the road, and also in back of us. He dig me a hole. You don't have to come with me. He was scared to death. He finally got paralyzed and frightened. Could never move his legs again. And he said, okay, you do that. Yes, sir, yes, sir. And I got back and he had dug me a hole. I was so goddamn mad I couldn't see straight. I was tired and beat up. Disappointed. I figured I could go up this chateau, a big stone chateau that people had gotten the hell out of, except for an old caretaker who was still hanging on. And it was whitewashed white. It had a stone walk in front. I walked in front of that white wall, and some German let go at me with a bloody machine gun, and all I could see was sparks out there. And suddenly I realized I wasn't running anymore. I was laying on the ground. Didn't feel a damn thing except I couldn't walk.
Now there's a lot of these places where
I dragged myself through the door of the damn thing. And the guys were bleeding like hell. I had a couple of shots underneath here. It looked like my leg was gone, but it wasn't much. But it was this leg. 2 of them creased me under here. A little hole in my ankle. But it still didn't
I
hurt.
never tried.
And I hadn't anything to eat all day long. And that old French caretaker and one GI were hiding in there.
So
And he
different.
had a piece of steak, so I sat down and ate some steak.
Well, you see, they just tell you
Ate that.
they used to cut through layers and then
And I didn't think it was too bad, except next morning it all stiffened up.
But they just don't. I don't know. You can't get through.
I had to go back to the aid station, and I didn't know they'd grab me. If you had an ambulatory wound, you got shipped back to England. If you were shot in the arm, you stayed there. They helped me out, didn't they? Field hospital, and I don't know what happened there. And finally we ended up back in England. And I couldn't walk for 3 or 4 weeks, I guess. Maybe longer than that. It didn't hurt me much. It did.
Did they ship you back after a month or so? 2 months?
Yeah, they never did get me. It must have been, the bullet apparently busted up. It must have been a ricochet or something. Anyway, they never did get it out. They got part of it out and left the other end. They were going to get it out, but then they forgot about it. A little piece comes out every now and then.
When you scratch your leg, you find a little piece? Itches as it comes out?
Huh? Yeah.
Does it itch as it comes out?
Yeah. It was down in the tendon. I think it was showing me in the field hospital. Where you cut the tendon and you got it out. Just leave it in. I never did get it out. It didn't get cut. I thought my leg was cut off at the knee. That's where all the blood was coming from. It just creased the 2 tendons in the back of your knee with 2 nice creases right across it. If they had been that far, it would take my whole leg right off.
Yeah, you're lucky you get your knee shattered at least.
Yeah, it was lucky as hell.
6 or 8 years. I never had any trouble getting through to it.
This time the bitch was only
I mean, no matter for the first
100
time.
feet away. It may be 50
The
feet
first
away.
time I go to somebody, I just let them do it, see what they do.
It was nighttime.
I think I did.
Everybody was just laying close, wondering who was who.
Just and then when I had that page,
It was that day they made an attack across the road and blown up.
oh, that's ages.
This was 2 days after that tank. I had this ammunition demolition
Yeah, she put it all up
outfit
here,
was composed of, they called the Pioneer outfit in each battalion. And we'd hold up in a stone barn. They had a great big cider press in it. A great stone trough. And I got the guys in there to tanks who were on the outfield. They started to dive in this tank, in this metal, this stone trough. They can't hurt you. And suddenly the bastards came up the lane. And we had a couple of ammunition trucks parked outside. They blew 2 of those up. And the others got them to get the trucks out and get down the gully on the other side of the road. You couldn't tell they were coming from all sides. They got them up there. And, I knew where the headquarters was. It was just across this field. I started up for it, but I didn't know that had been all blown up by the tanks that come across. And I got caught right in the middle of the damn field again. These damn Germans were shooting the hell out of me. There was a little patch of little higher grass in the middle, and I dived into that. Bullets would have missed me by that far. I could see the grass getting cut off. So I jumped up from there, and the only damn place I knew to hide was underneath the exploding ammunition truck. So I found out, it wasn't the first one I had blown up, that I was trying to get up the road off the beach, and nobody could move because a couple of half tracks with ammunition had gotten blown up. It would be bloom. They blow up all day. Mortar shells would go shooting off, and small arm pickup and bloom. Nobody wanted to get near 10 tons of ammunition blowing up. But we had to get up this day. And I got the damn weapons carrier and gunned it up and drove right past the damn thing. because I knew enough about it. I was guessing then, but it was a desperate damn thing. That most of the stuff didn't have any propellant force because it wasn't confined. You know,
Oh, I do.
all you had to worry about was the explosion itself. And I got the truck past it all right, and got past it another day. Another one was blowing like that. And I figured this goddamn truck had a big heavy metal bottom in it, which contained the explosive force, see? And if the explosive force went down, they had plenty of, it was wide open up above, say, or fairly wide open, because most of the stuff on the outside was blowing. So it tended, you could see a lot of it shooting up in the air like this. And figuring that was one place I'd be safe. I dived under the damn truck. And of course the Germans gave it a wide berth. They had been in the ammunition business like I was. And they went all around and finally had to retreat, disappeared. I don't know where they went. But what Sammy was getting underneath this ammunition truck blowing up. Mortar shells would go boom, and they shoot up about, maybe 100 feet, maybe 50 feet and fall. There was no propellant.
Yeah.
And the explosions kept going off and going off and going off. But not one of them came through the bottom of the truck. There's people who think the rest of the army thought it was really crazy. But it wasn't what it appeared. That's what you'd catch on to in the goddamn army, and it's the way you could stay alive. But what was really happening, as opposed to what looked like it was happening. So much in war is like that. You think the enemy's, you hear shots going off, and you're sure it's coming right at your head. And you realize and really are able to see some German shooting. You realize he's just shooting at random, like my own troops. Bang, bang, bang. But these guys were taking random shots. You didn't want to fool some of the paratroopers because they would really just draw a bead on you. But in a big action, it got so. Christ, there must be 10,000 shots fired for every man killed anyway. And you could. The main force of the infantry is always the howitzers. They had 88s, a lot of them, but they are too expensive to have masses of them. Most of the shelling, you could hear the shells. Pretty soon, if you stay a little bit calm, you knew just about how far away they were going to hit. Not exactly. They couldn't say 50 feet or even 100 feet. You damn well ducked. And the mortars didn't make much noise, so you couldn't hear them. But the main artillery, you knew when to duck, and all you really had to do was, you always took the chance of getting killed in a half-march road. If you walked along those French roads, every damn one of them had a drainage ditch. And you just didn't get too far from that drainage ditch. You stayed as close as you could hear the infantry, the opposite artillery from. When they went off, you knew there was going to be, well, you had probably 8 or 9 seconds. In some spots, maybe only 3 or 4 seconds. That's a long time. So you didn't want to be more than 3 seconds away from that ditch. You stay in pretty good shape. The main thing was to get flat on the ground. You didn't have a ditch because the shells always hit the ground and go out like that. Always. You didn't want to get caught in an apple orchard. Or I lost a hell of a lot of men out of the company. I'd gotten the hell out of it, but they weren't my men. I just had to get hold of them because the Germans would shoot their mortars into the branches, and it was set off the detonator. And that was deadly. And they did have air bursts, but air bursts for some reason. I don't know what it is. They don't use them too much. Sometimes they go off too soon, sometimes too late. Their proximity to the earth, and I think they're too expensive mostly. And they're shooting it by the boatload of ammunition there. And the tanks usually shot high explosive because if they use the regular armor piercing that's so fast and deadly on another tank, it wears out their damn barrels. Like ours, after 7 rounds, the damn barrel was no good. And on personnel, they always use high explosives. It means it goes off as soon as it hits. It doesn't go in.
Why the
I don't either. I've known that
armor piercing wear out the barrel?
Because it was high velocity. It was 4,000 feet a second. It was so fast that it set up such tremendous friction that it burned.
Scored the barrel kind of thing?
The howitzers, the high explosive, they can shoot it. 1,500. The slow stuff. No, they didn't have to shoot it with the intent of piercing a tank. Those Norman barns and a lot of the houses have been made out of sort of adobe. It looked very attractive. It looked like stone, but it wasn't. It was really a form of mud. And it was so airtight that it wasn't like bricks or stone with, little air pockets where the explosive could get in and force aside. If you shoot at a brick building, the explosive force goes in and it gets in every little crack and just blows the whole thing apart. But with this mud, it would go, the fuse would hit point first and it would go off. And there wasn't any, it was so dense there was no fissure that the explosive force could get into. There was no space. So it just took the line of least resistance and bounced in a cone in the other direction. So you could get behind one of those mud walls, and a damn tank was shooting, and just where I lost my dog. The damn tank was shooting at me point blank with high explosive, and the wall was about that thick, it was fairly thick, but it hardly made any difference.
Didn't knock he didn't do it halfway or anything, even?
No, didn't do it. It's amazing. It's the reason there were no shell holes in that field that I got caught in by the planes. There have been all high explosive shells lying. They don't leave any crater. But ever since I got caught in that hot, I lost part of my hearing. Never did this. My ears started ringing that day. They never stopped ringing. It was firing us up. Compressed the air so much it knocked the hell out of the ear.
Did you ever see Omar Bradley much after he was put in command of the American landing force? I'm sure he didn't land with the rest of the gang, did he?
I shot skeet with him one day because the colonel sent me off to borrow a pair of match Purdy's, those ones that were worth $15,000. And the local English lord loaned me the match set because Bradley was coming and the colonel wanted him to shoot skeet. He was a famous skeet shot. So I borrowed the Purdy's and got some guns. And I guess I was a lieutenant. He said, "Where'd you get these guns?" Oh, he said, "The lieutenant got them." Well, then he shall have the first shot. So I had the first shot and I missed it clean. And he grabbed that thing and he knocked those birds off. He was a nice, gentle old guy. But before those things would get out of the trap, he had them dead. He gave me the first shot and I missed it clean. And he stayed to dinner. That's the only person I picked up.
Well, I just wonder if you even saw him, because it seems like it's one thing to be in command, but I just can't imagine him, actually being on the beach with the rest of the troops. I guess he went.
Oh no, he wasn't on the beach for a couple of days.
He didn't go anywhere until it was secured, I guess.
No, they can't very well, really, because they have to be where they got the whole operational map, which is in London. Our general of the division didn't get in for a day or two after we did. Oh, it was more than that. The assistant commander gave a guy named Dutch Cody. He's in that last day thing. They call him Dutch. Robert Mitchum played him.
What was he? Assistant General?
Robert Mitchum. He was executive officer of the division.
The longest day or something?
Yeah, and Robert Mitchum was Dutch Coda. In fact, they called him Dutch, I think. And he was on the beach. And he said, "You're all going to die here. You might as well." He finally got a lot off the beach. Also, he told the men not to take any prisoners. Didn't show that in the pictures. They didn't either. Shot a lot of Germans. Those guys were shooting German prisoners by the dozen. Those are the ones that were scared to death were shooting them. But he figured they were going to get swept off the beach and they hadn't had time to fool with any prisoners. And all this hoopla about the Germans shooting us. We shot just as many German prisoners as they ever shot. Maybe more. The Army really gets desperate. They're not about to stop and deal with prisoners. The Germans were desperate in the bulge, and we were desperate on the beach. And really, even at that, I don't think that only the people that were scared to death really shot him. In fact, they one guy 7 prisoners to take back down the beach road, and as soon as he got around the hedgerow, blip, 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 he shot the whole bunch of them. Never saw him anymore after that. There they were, all dead right in line. People that get terrified are enraged afterwards. You know, that they're enraged that somebody's terrified and they're scared of them to death. So they start shooting when they get a prison.
They ever torture anybody? Any Germans?
Yeah.
Get any information on it?
Yeah. Not that I ever knew of. I don't think so. They may have kicked him around. I wouldn't doubt it. This whole thing come patches.
You ever run into poison gas?
Yeah. The thing we were worried about was poison whiskey. We were given all these lurid tales about the German booze would all be poison, booby traps would be all over the place. And I didn't drink anything for about 10 days. When we took a German position, they had this cognac, Hennessy. I said, I just can't throw this stuff away.
Poison or not.
So I had a couple of drinks of Hennessy. The war got so much easier right away. And then next day I captured a German truck. And the farmers had great casks of Calvados.
What's Calvados?
It's apple brandy. And I had that truck filled up with so much Calvados, and some of the guys would knock over a cafe or something, and the people had all gone. I had, in those days, $35,000 worth of booze on it. And I carried 2 canteens full of the best of the Calvados. Very popular fellow. It didn't seem to matter whether you drank or not. You didn't notice any difference except you felt better. And then one day a German shell hit that truck. I had a captured German bicycle made out of magnesium, marvelous light. I used to ride all over the front for it.
Is it real light?
Lightest thing. It would beat the hell out of walking. And it was right on top. And a German shell hit that damn thing, and the whole damn thing blew up. It was sad. $35,000 worth in my bicycle.
With all those cameras, did you get any pictures of anything?
Oh my God. You know, I don't think we ever saw a photographer the whole 4 months, 8 weeks of the invasion that I was in it. It was just, you couldn't stand up with any damn camera. You'd be killed so fast. Never any reporter or picture. It was, you could only, if you were getting shot at in action with particularly the paratroopers, your horizon was never more than 30 or 40 feet. And the other time you were diving one direction or the other.
There's some footage of that landing on the beach, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
simulated.
Is it simulated? I thought it was real.
it's 3 or 4 days later. There's still a lot of corpses. I came back there 3 days after D-Day, and the little cliff up there, I could count 800 bodies. And the next day, I think they started clearing them up. But if you noticed in those pictures, you don't see many corpses.
No, I'm thinking of a picture of men coming off their amphibious thingies.
Yeah, but they were still doing that for 2 weeks because it was still rough. And the harbor, see, they tried to build a harbor there by sinking ships. They finally got it stabilized, but they still had to come off in the surf. And the corpses were there for at least 3 days, and you couldn't anyway get near those cliffs without walking over a lot of corpses.
Well, I guess that one picture I'm thinking of, if that was really the first bunch of people landing, the Germans would have to take the picture. I suppose they were.
Different perspectives.
Well, they may have taken them up at Utah Beach or something where they didn't really meet any opposition on the beaches. Not a little inland. But that thing was just so littered with dead soldiers that you literally had to walk over them. And equipment. You had to crawl over the equipment that was dropped.
Dad's cousin died on
Even had corpses twisted around the propellers of the landing craft that were all beached and shot up there. Looked like pieces of rag with straight skin. They were supposed to have, Air Corps was supposed to have saturated the beach 2 hours before we landed. Just bombed the whole strip. And for some strange reason, they got off course, bombed 4 miles inland. Hard to think how they could do that, but there was so much smoke and confusion that I guess they just dropped them. Anyway, they didn't hit, not a damn one ever hit the beach. This thing couldn't have been more disorganized if they'd planned it to be disorganized.
Maybe it would have been less disorganized if they'd planned it to be disorganized.
Well, Omaha Beach had 18-foot tides.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, it's amazing. You're marching along in the woods, and all of a sudden you'll see this giant freighter with no water around it.
What did you do? Land on what tide? Did you try and shoot for a tide? Or did you...
We had to land on a high tide.
Yeah.
And that was in an attempt to get over the tetrahedrons and the blockage systems. See, they had barbed wire strung all between them. And they figured they had to float over the barbed wire.
He's a bad guy.
Yeah, I thought we were looking at some horror movie instead of good old Trapper. What'd you say?
Pericardial tamponade.
Certainly got a lot of strange characters in that hospital.
Kiwi, you smell good.
I'm what? Just like the magic pill.
Your breath is so fresh.
That's close-up.
Big up. By your own mental reaction. Just too damn many people that get well from a really good attitude. And what they do is I think they let their body work naturally when they're feeling right. It produces a lot of the antitoxins they're discovering all the time, like a natural morphine that the body produces. It's in good shape and everything is all right, and you're not mentally upset. They're obviously going to produce them better. And these palliatives give people confidence, and they gives them peace of mind. It gives them the body a chance to heal itself. It's not, some hocus pocus.
Well, maybe we're going back to that way. People get disenchanted with the high cost of medical care and the bureaucracy of hospitals and the ineptness of doctors. Maybe they'll go back to just saying, well, I'll just take care of it myself.
It's kind of crazy one of those guys that didn't give that some recognition tonight.
Tuesday, CBS presents Word of Honor. Carl Malden is
That's why the old family practitioner
if he keeps his word, the killer will go free. If he reveals
I was telling about it, an old father was that the miraculous cures he had time to get on nothing but sugar pills. But he finally came to recognize his long experience that he was doing him a bad favor if he didn't give him something like a sugar pill. Because so often they'd get well with no way he could possibly explain what it was that I think is the body in its natural state has tremendous recuperative powers, just like the dog's does. If you're negative as hell and think you're going to die, you'll produce some pretty bad chemicals.
Buy now during the $1 million discount sale at Fox, the Chevrolet Auto and Truck Discount Center, where the discount really counts.
Same reason hypochondriacs get physically sick. They produce, their nervous system produces a bad set of chemical flows.
On the other hand, dying may not always be negative in someone who may want to die.
No, I don't. Dying may be a perfectly natural event. That's what your attitude is.
Yeah.
But what I mean is you can imagine yourself right into dying. And it's really a chemical means in the end. It's your chemical and electrical, because your body doesn't react the way it should. You produce antitoxins. You're convinced you're going to die, and you assume the nervous state that you might end death. You could produce, obviously, adrenaline. A state of mind. If you can do that, then there's no reason why you can't produce a lot of other.
If you hypnotize yourself, I imagine you do a lot of things. Like you said, a lot of people apparently can hypnotize themselves.
No, it's even more than that. There's so many of these women that have had bone transplants and spine operations have suffered practically no pain at all. And they've had the same operation before, it was terribly painful for them. So we're told to turn it over to a higher priority. They can't do anything but turn it over so that relaxes.
Top Iranian official says the shift is part of a plan to take full control of all 52 American captives.
I had that hernia. I had trouble all. I had 3 others that were barely painful. This was much older.
Yeah, should have hurt more?
Yeah. I really didn't have any bad time at all. But I tried to
move. Says it has received only news reports of the move, nothing official from the Iranian government. The Iran government has been especially active the last couple of days in discussing the hostages' fate. Iran radio broadcasts monitored by the BBC in London have taken a hard-line stance, warning that unless the United States meets Iran's demands for $24 billion for the release of the hostages, the captives will be put on trial as spies. White House News Secretary Jerry Powell said the broadcast faced the nation today.
Ask it for
The
higher
U.S. is
power,
trying
maybe
to
just
find out
return
why
to your
the 3
normal
hostages were moved. He also made it
instinctive
very
self
clear that if the
if you take
Americans
the
are
strain
placed
off
on
of
trial, the U.S. won't sit idly by.
We have made it very clear beginning when this subject first arose
November 20th, I believe, of last year, or year before last, 1979, that if our people were placed on trial, that the government of the United States could not sit idly by, and that very serious consequences would flow from that. I believe the Iranians understand that very clearly. There have been statements during these past many months about trials that have not taken place. At this point, should they take place, then we will have no option but to act.
The Council on Hemispheric Affairs released a report today naming the Central American nation of El Salvador as the one having the worst human rights record. Recent events would seem to confirm El Salvador's ranking. Last month, 2 American nuns and an American missionary were slain. Today, it is learned that 2 more Americans have been murdered. Authorities in El Salvador say Potomac, Maryland lawyer Michael Hammer and Seattle lawyer Mark Perlman were gunned down by 2 pistol-wielding attackers. The 2 men were shot along with a third man, a Salvadorian citizen, while drinking coffee this morning in a hotel cafeteria.
I would think it's pretty clear that if you don't want to get shot,
with the AFL-CIO.
you shouldn't be in El
Salvador. The El
Salvador.
Salvadoran government has promised an investigation into the shooting.
Very
El
healthy
Salvador
atmosphere.
will be one of the points sure to be discussed when President-elect Reagan makes his first post-election diplomatic venture beyond the U.S. borders tomorrow. Mr. Reagan meets with Mexican President Jose Lopez Portillo in the middle of a bridge over the Rio Grande, then head to nearby Ciudad Juarez for talks. Mexico advocates a hands-off policy towards El Salvador, where the Marxist-led guerrillas are trying to overthrow a U.S.-backed junta. As a candidate, Reagan said that he would look closely at U.S. aid to Marxist-led regimes. Well, tomorrow marks the beginning of the draft registration for thousands of Maryland men born in 1962. Those men who have not already signed up for the draft should report to local post offices this week to register. Here's the schedule. Men born in January, February, and March of 1962 should register on Monday. On Tuesday, men born in April, May, or June. On Wednesday, those men born in July, August, or September of 1962. And on Thursday, it's registration for men born in October, November, and December. Friday and Saturday are the makeup days. While those young people are preparing to sign up for the draft, anti-draft groups are using El Salvador as a reason to stay away. They say that that could be the next Vietnam. Yvonne Hayes, who is with MCARD, the Maryland Committee Against Registration and the Draft, says that her group will make young people truly aware of registration.
Explaining to them what the draft registration means, what the dangers are of U.S. military intervention overseas, both the risks of not registering and the risks of registering for the draft. The government has been explained to people pretty clearly what can happen to you if you don't register for the draft. But we think that young people need to know what could happen to them if they do, which is that they may be sent to some country like El Salvador to fight a war like the Vietnam War, and they may lose their lives there.
Those young men, however, who do not register are subject to a $10,000 fine plus 5 years in prison.
Post office to mess over there.
Yeah.
So what'd you do?
So, hi. So we, I got to call and find out. I guess I just can send them a note, can't I?
I really don't know what you have to do. Or would you do me a favor and bring those puffs up here before you go?
Sure.
Hard for me to get them up the steps. I'd call them up. I don't know what time they close. 2 o'clock.
We're going to the Granny's
4 o'clock.
a couple minutes away. Going.
I really don't feel like it. My legs are a mess. I'm not going up there now. It's too cold. But I don't know what. You want me to call them up and ask them? Well, I can do that.
Sure.
Well, if you bring those 2 puffs up here, I don't. Oh, that post office is a mess anyway. It always says you never can park. Oh, I'll ask them what you have to do. Is letting them a letter or not?
His address from this to this.
I would think so, but I don't mind asking them if you like.
Maybe they changed their procedure.
I don't know.
Can I take a shower up there?
Sure. Yeah. I got the job looking at you. Just put the puffs up on my bed.
In your bed? Okay.
Yeah. We went to the heroes ship.
Well, that one guy said all the heroes were the ones that were left behind.
isn't it great romantic illusion how brave and noble and what the hell we are? I mean, it takes it out of reality of what really is happening. All these GIs want to do is go home. That's all they wanted to do. But they were allowed to go home.
Well, I imagine plenty of them decided they were going to go home anyway. A few of them did anyway. They decided, that's just it. They knew they could at least get it. I guess, were they threatened with a treason and court-martial if they were to go AWOL?
Well, they had deserters, but they took a terrible beating. They were afraid of deserters because they beat Christ. They couldn't come back and face their family.
Yeah.
It was all an image problem. I think I have to beat the drum and say the great spirit of the American Army. It's all probably the same in every goddamn war. Waves, flags, play the music. 99% of them were conscripts, like they are in every war. You are required to register, we'll put you in the slammer and you'll be disgraced for life anyway.
Well, yeah.
I don't say there weren't a lot of unselfish, heroic acts, but most heroes don't mean to be heroes at all. It's that reaction if you see your friend out there wounded. You don't go out there and grab him under heavy guard thinking you're going to be killed. Your instincts take over, and you dash out to pick the guy up, and then they say, "You're a hero." Who? Me? Because he hadn't thought of it. You know, he wouldn't sit there, "I'm going to sacrifice my life to go out there." He sees his friend out there, and you let him grab him. It's literally a mindless thing, but it's instinctive. If you don't go out there expecting to get killed, I don't suppose anybody leading the great charges in history really expect to get killed.
Well, that's just it. I mean, after all the times that you just explained to me last night, described to me about the hand grenades banging on your helmet, and you know, just how can you after you get 3 or 4 of those, how can you not either think like you did that you're not going to get killed in the rest of the war, or else you're going to get it tomorrow?
Yeah, but by that time you have very little say over the matter, you know. You don't stay there because you're heroic. Hey, fathead, what are you trying to do?
Step on my stuff over here.
Oh, poor fellow. He injured his feelings.
Well, I was trying to count up all the times, all the close calls you had yesterday. I can't remember them all. I wish I could.
I can't either. I really didn't remember a lot of the last night when I got driving.
Well, I was impressed. I never heard a lot, 60% or 75% of the stories.
Well, I don't know, you hear so much crap from the American Legion crew, you know, that shit right at the top. You just shut up. There's some guy on there I've seen about 50 times, his tears running down his cheeks and telling about the heroism of his friends, and they were all good. That guy's appeared on about 50 different shows, and each time he weeps. They're clasping old friends that I know they don't recognize till they're introduced to them. That same guy keeps showing up and showing up. And you know, goddamn, he gets more stirring and more tears every time. You're afraid you might be like that son of a bitch, you know. Couldn't remember all his goddamn details.
Well, it's funny. Everybody. Just imagine what all the stuff that happened to you that you forgot.
Yeah, because your memory is so goddamn faulty about most of the stuff, except a few things that stand out. Because I was reading Henry Mencken, and he said, I took great pride in the fact that I told everybody I started to play the piano at the age of 3. And I guess I was pretty proud of that. Well known. And then he said I was going through the old man's documents. I found he didn't buy the piano till I was 8. He had nerve enough to say that anyway. Sarah, he would tell everybody at the musical Sunday he played the piano at the age of 3. He was a pretty cute guy, too.
Let's see, there was the situation where you tried to open the door with the booby trap with a hand grenade, and that didn't go off. There was a time that you left that group of guys that you scaled and took that objective, Purple Heart Hill, left them to go back and get some more ammunition.
I had to go back, but I knew that everybody would be out of ammunition. They had to be gotten up right behind them because they weren't going to go back and get it. So if they all run out of ammunition, my ass would have been out. That wasn't my goddamn job. It's just that a colonel to see if you can't get them started. It was an order, you know. So I walked out, started hollering, yelling, like Indians, whoop-ah. They go, whoa. But then if I didn't stir them up, I was amazed when they got up. A couple of guys got up and started joining in on the stuff. And then the others came along. It was like that. But you had to go first. You had to go first. The British know more about that because all their second lieutenants all get killed instead of ours. Because that's the reason for the officer corps. They're supposed to get this image of being fearless, and the British give them a swagger stick, you know. They stand up, let themselves be fired at, and they lose most of them that way, but they get the men going. The non-coms, the sergeants are good friends with the men. They're living with them every day. The officer's got to be something separate. You know, he's sacred. You don't dare say anything back or say anything but sir, and always salute. So you're taught, you know, this guy is above everything. And the British know that, so I guess they teach them in Sandhurst, you're not supposed to show any goddamn fear. And we were trained to think, well, the lieutenant, even in the he commands platoons, which is 3 or 4 squads of men. That's 32 guys. But he's got a platoon sergeant who's supposed to lead them in battle. But it never happens. The British know that. Because the platoon sergeant is living with these guys, and they know him, he's just another guy. So they don't move. And like an A company that has a couple of nice, they were very religious, very full-duty lieutenants. And they didn't last 4 days. 4 of them all bang, bang, bang. They had to get up and walk in front. And that's the purpose of second lieutenants. I guess all of them got killed. The sergeant couldn't get him going. He's got to go up and walk in front. And then in Normandy, all the captains were getting lost because they had to get up there. Even the lieutenants were too scared. The captain, Christ, his whole company, he's going to look like shit if he doesn't advance. So he has to get up and go first. And they were always getting killed going through the hedgerow gates. And their legs blowing off and whatnot. That was sure death, I'm telling you, I do that. The nice thing about my wartime, I didn't have to be worried about a lot of men. Mostly always alone.
But you had to deal with men driving trucks. And
yeah, I had but I didn't have to take them with me.
What do you mean a ticket? I mean, didn't you have to tell them where to drive and?
Yeah, but
didn't they follow? What happened?
You couldn't possibly drive a Jeep or a weapons carrier truck on the front line. You had to be behind a hill or something. Had to have some protection.
I mean, how did it actually work? Were you in the Jeep in the very front and the trucks were following you?
Well, what I did, I set the headquarters right back, or maybe sometime in front of the regimental headquarters, which was right up to the church then, because they were afraid they'd be cut off. That's the way Purnell operated anyway. He wanted everything forward. Some of the others didn't do that. And it turned out to stay out of all the goddamn fierce German artillery, they had to put the kitchens way the hell back. And usually they got the food up at nighttime, and then they were usually hand carried up to the front. So they let the guy out and go back 3 or 4 hitch roads to pick up his chow. And then we had a hell of a lot of sea rations to eat most of the time. That's what they lived on for, oh Christ, for a couple of weeks, I guess. But I had this one guy with a deer hunter up in Pittsburgh area, and that guy could cook. He'd get hold of a piece of bacon by hook or crook, maybe captured from the Germans, but put it in sea ration. He made a marvelous stew out of it. He got to be pretty famous. A lot of visitors coming back to get this marvelous food. It wasn't anything but sea rations doctored up.
Must have gotten some of that fat off the Germans.
Yeah, he couldn't fix that thing. I never did find out what his secret was. It was really good. Of course, they were hungry fellows. They had K rations that you carried, and they were condensed stuff. The only little pack of it this big. They had cheese, a couple of cigarettes, and Spam of some kind. And that's the only thing they lived on the first 3 or 4 days. Only I didn't eat for about 3 days at first because I couldn't get the food. There's a lot of geese in Normandy. I don't forget what night it was, but I was hungry. I said, Christ, I'm going to get one of these goddamn geese. And I eased up to his house. I didn't know where the Germans were. We didn't know where the other regiments were or anything else. And I snuck up and it was like a damn fool. I go for the gander. And they all jumped in the goddamn little pond. You know, and I was afraid to make any noise. I kept waving my rifle at him. He got out and he got into the barn. Yeah, boy, he got under a goddamn haymow. Spike sitting down. I'm getting there trying to hit him with the rifle. I thought he was going to kill me. He was hissing. I couldn't move. He started pecking me. All I did was I'm going to get killed by a goose. And I finally got him like a damn fool. He was the toughest son of a bitch. I couldn't fight anything in this deserted house except this little tiny fire. I knew the Germans, if they smelled anything, would take a pot at me. And they were scattered around. They didn't know where the hell they were either, I guess. But they were on their own ground. So he got about 1/4 done. And it was so tough I couldn't chew it. I must have spent all night getting that son of a bitch ready. I got one breast partly picked and cut it out, you know. And I kept chewing. I couldn't possibly. He must have been 50 years old. What the hell? I was so dumb to pick out when I could have picked out one of the hens. But tried to get that goddamn thing, thinking I was going to get shot at him. But it was a conflict between fear and hunger. It was really comic. I said, son of a bitch, I'm going to get killed under this haymow. All the time getting out, I got in and the spokes were pointed this way, saying I'm going further in, trying to get out again. I couldn't get out. This me and this great big goose going like that. It was a ridiculous situation when I think of that. I was so hungry. They all had artichokes in the garden. And they still all these artichokes, but they weren't ripe yet.
One other time was a sort of comic deal. I almost had to shoot my sergeant because when the war was, the Germans had weakened and they were scattered out. It was when I got those shotguns, and we wanted some more. Everybody wanted to feel less cameras went up, so I got old Daly, who was a great drunk, but he was a great one for potting Germans anyway when he got drunk. It took a long time to get him drunk. And we left the front, which was really not a front then, and started into Germany, but we were in Germany. And we rode and didn't see much, and we got to this village and got those shotguns because the order'd gone out. Germans hadn't surrendered yet. The army hadn't, but they told the civilians we were going to collect all their arms. Like good Germans, they brought them all to the little city hall room about twice the size.
What, you know what city this was?
All their shotguns and rifles. They thought they were going to have some guerrilla action. But the good Germans were used to taking orders. We picked out what the hell we wanted. Except they take them all apart, just to be sure. You had to make a pretty good search. So then we started down the goddamn road. We didn't know where the hell we were. We knew about to get back. We were 10 miles in what should have been German lines. We figured our Germans have all quit. So we get to this goddamn crossroad, and here comes a bunch of Germans in battle formation across the field. Yeah, he says, I'm going to kill them, sons of bitches. I said, like hell you are, you're going to get killed. We don't have any backup at all. These guys, it was, I guess, the whole platoon. Said, yeah, I'm going to follow them. I said, don't get out of the car, Sergeant. That's a strict order. Ah, Christ, he said, I'm getting it. I said, you get out of the car, I'm going to shoot you. And I would have, because the only way you could save the bastard's life. He was going to attack, about 30 Germans, and they were armed. They hadn't heard of any goddamn surrender yet. So I got all set, and I held it right on his goddamn calf like I'm going to kill you. And he looked, and he finally caught on I was really going to shoot him. But I would have shot the guy to save his life. It was such a dumb situation. There's this other bitch, the war's almost over. You go out there to get the goddamn Germans.
Well, that must. So you knew that the war was close. How did you know that you? I mean, how could you take that kind of a chance? How did you know the war was that close to being over?
Well, because a lot of the Germans were. You could feel it in the air that when we got across. Well, we well across the Rhine. We weren't too far from the Elbe, and the resistance was so sporadic. They were just getting the hell out of there. But these guys apparently hadn't heard that they probably never seen any Americans, but they were all set to. There was somebody's squad back there, and they were all set to shoot. He was going to tackle them. They were on the other side of the field. Just a couple hundred yards, and I guess they were eyeing us, but didn't know what the hell was going on. See if anybody was behind us. That son of a bitch was going to go across there and shoot the Germans up, all drunk up. God, I want to get this nice guns back.
You remember? So that's where that over and under shotgun came from?
Yeah, that's where the over and under came from. I had a couple of others. The real nice is I gave them to the guy that kept my dog off during the war. What the hell happened to the others?
Well, you remember what town in Germany that was?
The biggest idea. They all had such strange names, little towns. And then when we crossed the road, we took a town called Tits, and it caused a big amount of hilarity. Tits. Right before we got to Tits, we knew we had them on the run. I still wanted to get cameras and pistols. So I went into the headquarters they just vacated in a stone town, a little village there. I'm walking through the cellar, the bumped right into the German. We just bumped into each other. The German soldier. I reached for my pistol. I couldn't get the damn thing out. He was sitting there. Finally, I got the pistol out. Alf Gavin said, "Come, Rodman, come on." He didn't want to shoot anybody. I bumped right into him and the damn saw it. As the troops went, he just stayed there. He didn't want to come out and get shot. But it was a real bump, like walking through the door, bump right in there, just goddamn German GI. He was probably a company clerk or something. Marched him out and gave him to the people who were marching other prisoners back. But I was about to take me 5 minutes to get that pistol out. I was totally unprepared because the troops had just gone through there. I could see them up the road.
Well, where did you get a lot of those pewter mugs and stuff? You got those at some castle, didn't you?
Yeah. It wasn't a castle, but it was what they call a schloss, or manor house. It was right around the Elf River. And it had the most, it had a great array of them. And I was sort of half concentrating about stealing that kind of, it wasn't military stuff. And the GIs were always criticizing them. They grabbed everything, even took boats apart and nailed them home. Anyway, it was the regimental headquarters for a while, and they got very involved in, the Germans had sent a message over across the Elbe River, this is about 30 miles from Berlin, that they had the German crown silver, and they wanted the Americans to get it so the Russians wouldn't get it. That's why they had that one boat when I almost got caught on the other side of it. And they brought over the crown silver, and for our agency, afterwards, of course, it ended up in Washington. So we had the goddamn stuff on this great banquet table. A lot of it was gold. It was an awful temptation to nip some of that. I'm sure a lot of people did it. That's, it's common interest. You're not here to steal stuff. But they had these great ornate figures, silver and gold, just great gold figures. So it was ancient German crown silver the Kaiser had. Lay down, Mo. Down. Down. Hey. So at any rate, I resisted that temptation, but all around the walls was that good-looking German pewter. It's a little bit different than English. There's tall, thin ones. Mm-hmm. So I nipped a couple of mugs, and they owe that to me.
So, I mean, were they up on display shelves like they weren't used?
Yeah, they were all around. They had a big high shelf, and it must have been 200 of them up there.
So it was like they were displaying, and they weren't really for use.
No, they were too old. They were antique. They like antiques too.
Well, how old do you any idea how old do you think they might be?
I haven't taken that yet. But it's they stopped using pewter, I guess, 150 years ago. Maybe 100, maybe. That was what they had originally made their stuff out of. I don't know why they get on pewter. It's so much easier to cast, I guess, than DR. Another reason they used to use them in England, I think, was stamp collector would come around and tax each one of those stamps on there, of the king's stamps.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's what those stamps are?
Yeah.
They would tax them based on the stamp?
They had some way of taxing them by the cup.
Wow.
That's what they told me they were pouring the king's stamps on. I don't know if the Germans had that stuff or not. They may not have taxed them. Boy, he had some gorgeous stuff. Pewter, all kinds of great big stamps.
You took 3 of them.
Maybe 4. The rest is all English.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. And they were cheap as hell. You could go in the antique shops. They were absolute black. Corrosion. So, you know, they've been laying around so long, even though they were supposed to be less for it. And I got, what the hell was it? Shell soda or something like that. In England had an old crop bag, and I let them sitting there for a couple of months, and then come off. They'd never attacked the virgin metal itself. The black stuff would come off. They'd get them for quarter, 50 cents, those old black ones. A bunch of them in old bags. But the two that don't have a handle on them like I have a monastery in England, and that's why they sold them to. I got to talk to the abbot. It was an abbot that had never refused a meal to anyone since 1100. And you go in and they give you, I don't know, or something, sausage sandwich and a glass of bitter out of those things. But the reason they could do it, they give anybody. You stop so they had a enclosed gate like Shepherd Pratt. Abbott is in there, and they come in and have your lunch. But it got so that people wanted to do that, and they always left a big contribution. So it was kind of a money-making scheme in the end. But he had this in there, and he said, "Yeah, you can buy this." So I bought them. They weren't very expensive either. But it was an ancient abbey that probably had a couple of hundred already in there, and they didn't. None of that stuff had any value in the wartime. Some of the smart guys would buy the whole antique shop. They'd walk in, there were a lot of them were the size of this room. The English love antiques. The wartime, it wasn't worth anything. They weren't doing any business. And the smart guys would say, "I'll buy the whole shop, how much you want." They made a fortune. That would take a couple $1,000 for this stuff. That's probably worth $100,000.
Well, how did you get all the Nazi flags? Did you just find them in one location, or did you pick them up and roll off?
Most of them. We captured this Air Corps barracks, and they had a great big drill field about the size of the stadium, and poles about every 10 feet with these flags on them. Hundreds of them. And there's a lot of things you don't put any value on them. There's a whole lot of stuff that I guess it's got no value. So I used them to wrap up the pistols and the guns in when they paper. So I'd wrap them up in those, since that's the only thing I could wrap them in. And Charlie used them for relief bags.
I remember that. I remember that.
Towards the end of the war, one of the best times I had was it. Right before we got to Elk River, the Germans were all taking off across the river. Everybody knew that it was going to be over before too long. And they ran onto this ammunition dump. It was in a little quarry, maybe 200 feet around. And they used it for an ammunition dump for the regiment, so it wouldn't get shot up. Got in there, and they had every kind of ammunition you wanted. I had a couple of P-38s by that time. And I was shooting everything. It's like boomity bang bang, and flares, beautiful flares. We'd shoot up. You couldn't run out of ammunition. It was just all around you. We stayed there about 2 hours. Had to get back. Jesus, I'll never get another chance to have unlimited ammunition and all these wonderful flares. That's where I got the flare gun. When we got news of the armistice, we were in this quiet little town back of the river. Nobody was completely thrilled for some reason or other. I guess it's kind of an anticlimax. But There's a little lieutenant named Tony Miller who just got so high and skinny and a real clown. And we decided we were going to scare the hell out of the German populace. There's still Germans in that town because it never was too small anybody to bother with. They hadn't been driven out. In fact, they were only 30 miles from Berlin anyway. They had no place to go. So I said, Tony, I had this flare gun. He shoots the thing, and this great big red ball comes shooting out as a pistol with a great big thing like this in it. We're going outside and have a terrible argument, and you're going to insult me, and I'm going to threaten you. You're going to run down the main street, and I'm going to shoot at you with the flare gun. You fall over, I'll shoot over your head. You fall over, and I'll come out and kick you. So we have this argument. Yeah. And finally, he takes off down the street, and I take this thing. A great big red ball comes out and goes way over his head. But Jimmy didn't know that. He falls down dead. So I go over and kick him a couple times and walk away. The goddamn Germans, you can see all these windows closing. They were gas, these savages had hold of them. I'd like to see old Tony again. He was from somewhere back in Tennessee or someplace. We teach them to fear the American Army, all right. He'd land down the street, I'd kick him. Then about 5 minutes later, of course, he gets up, we laugh. They the Germans thought it was too goddamn funny.
That probably had him even more confused at that point.
Huh?
They probably thought you were crazy when that happened.
These people are insane. I know they've been told we were insane. A lot of their warfare was a propaganda minister, where that pistol came from, Gables. And you could tell in the war how much propaganda could do, because they just delivered them so much propaganda. That's why they never bothered about the Holocaust. They didn't know much about it anyway, but they got completely different messages over radio every goddamn day, and about what was really happening. It was just a blast of whatever Goering wanted to tell them, and that's all you could hear. So that they kept on blindly fighting the war, because that's what they heard. It was in England. Don't pay any attention to any rumors at all. The enemy's listening. It's all that the enemy wants to start rumors. But all you got was, I'm sure England did the same thing we probably did to some extent. The Goering was a past master, and that's how they always whipped the Germans into the line. It could be done with any goddamn nation if you got it. What it is, it's a super advertising, man.
Yeah.
It could make you believe anything. Any nation will fall for that kind of stuff. It's worked all the time by our dear press.
Yep.
Only Gables had it down to a fine art.
Well, what did you hear? They used to broadcast all kinds of stuff to you and at night or something? And
yeah, they broadcast and they dropped stuff on the line. We were dropping stuff on their line. Mm-hmm. And they come over at night and drop a lot of leaflets. And we in turn would drop a lot of leaflets on their side to try to demoralize the troops, That was the point of it. They sure had that Germans are not bad people at all. They got this blast of misinformation. That's the only thing that was coming over the air, so they were afraid to disagree with it. Our politicians do the same thing. Like Walt Disney. He's got a wonderful image. Great image makers. The president's got a whole table full of image makers down there. There was a guy from Louisiana. And with that other one he just hired a couple months ago, a big tall guy. That worked on the dirty tricks for the Republicans for quite a while.
Gergen?
Gergen, yeah. He worked the same thing for the Republicans. They switched over to the Democrats because they needed him to help the president's image. They do it almost out in the open, and it still works. And old Walt Disney was a master at it, obviously.
Yeah.
The stamps are awful old. Only trouble is you got to get a guy to do something with that.
Well, I'm picking through and I'm finding some that have never been written on. I think that may mean the postcard may be a little bit more valuable, really. I don't know. I know that postcards, sometimes I've gone around, because I like old funny postcards, and I'll poke around if I'm in an antique shop, and most of the way they seem to organize postcards, they just throw them in a box, and they don't seem to make any effort to separate them. And the only times I've noticed that the more expensive ones are the ones that have no writing on them. I don't know. I think what they end up doing, if they're not really a dealer in it, they probably have cleaned out bought the contents of somebody's attic, and they just put it out and hope somebody will take it.
Yeah, because
Now this one I bet would have been valuable if it hadn't been for the writing on the front of it.
yeah.
See, now this one I bet's valuable, and there's no writing on that one.
Well, they're collectors for everything nowadays. You got to be in the business to make the money.
Yeah.
Like old Cavalco's taking just ordinary stamps. But he'd take them in blocks. He knew they weren't blocks. That's important. He paid for his whole damn passage. How the hell is a Turk going to get a block of 6 American? If you're not a collector, you probably can't figure it. There's other funny jokes. Did you see the British tank in Mount Watson?
No.
Got a piece of it there. So it came across an old newspaper clipping. It's half of it. Took it over to the home down. So the 1918 British tank coming up South Road. Shooting those funny jokes.
Oh, that would be disappointing, wouldn't it?
So where is this one? Here's another funny joke. Y'all greetings to Dundalk, didn't you?
Yeah, I like that one. There's that other creative one.
I like this one. I've already read it. I'd like to show your son next Halloween. Very funny, very funny. Here's a nice little conversation.
Good question. Always a good question.
Here's an important thing to show your son too. Here's the last one.
New Yorker's worth it just for the cartoons.
I don't know if the other one isn't anything much. That's all we were kind of word.
I guess you was wrong.
Try to be it, but I was wrong. Reminds you of somebody, you know. I think those kind of people are necessary, though. Nature likes to put things in all kinds of forms. All strange-looking animals and strange-looking customs. It's always got a diversity. That's one of a grumpy old man.
Well, I'm married to a warrior. I know what they're like. Speaking of warrior work, I got a call her. She told me a call, make sure I was safe.
Your wife?
She's probably asleep by now.
The women like to worry.
That's the truth. I'm going to just let her know I'm okay.
I'm watching the bullfrogs. In Africa, that's nature. On top of it. Before the rainy season, the dry season sets in, they bury themselves in the mud and weave this caul around themselves and reduce their metabolism to about 1/50th. And in Australia, they stay there as much as 7 years. And then they, as soon as the rain starts, they come out again. They showed pictures of them coming out. They're in great shape. But how the hell do they know how to do this? There's actually an intellect.
I saw it on Wild Kingdom.
Yeah. There's actually an intellect that sees the future. We're always denigrating dumb intellect and dumb instinct. But before we started talking so much and thinking and being instructed that we're the only animal that uses reason, how in the hell does that frog know that the dry season is coming and he's got to bury himself? How does he know that? In some other intellect thing, he knows that's what the thing to do is. So literally, he sees the future.
Who knows how many senses we've lost by
That's right. We lost true.
relying on our brain.
What we lost is true intelligence. And the butterflies that are born in late August, they fly to Mexico to that certain mountain. They've got to know where the mountain is before they get there. So it's another way of knowing that we've been saying, oh, that's just dumb instinct. But literally, it's much superior to ours. The Arctic tern does the same thing. He's born up in the Arctic. He doesn't follow mom and papa. It's all mixed up by that time. So he goes down the coast of Europe, and he gets the Mediterranean. He pops in there to get fed up. He's never been there. So how the hell does he know to make this left-hand turn? He sees the future. He sees, and then he flies all the way down the coast of Africa, pulls around the Arctic and the Antarctic. Then when spring comes, he flies up by South America. How does he know how to do this if he doesn't see the future? How does that frog know? I think it's time to bury myself because the dry season's coming. How does he know how to reduce his metabolism?
They remember through their genes.
Yeah.
They remember what their
Yeah.
ancestors saw.
We've lost the genetic information that could, our intellect says no way you can see the future, but he does. He's looking at
Maybe
the
he sees
future.
the past. You know, in that case, of knowing where to go.
Whatever it is that amounts, sometimes the dog will know when I'm half a mile away when I'm coming here. So your dog knew you were coming. How does he know that?
I saw this thing on TV that said they did a scientific study of dogs, and something like 89% of the dogs they studied know when master is about 2 miles away. They say they're psychic. They can pick up on the
It's another intellect is what it is. And scientists are so involved in their, they're too specialized to see what's really happening. So it's just dumb instinct. Dumb instinct. They say the bloody future.
They did a scientific study here. They proved your dogs are psychic.
Well, we call it psychic, but actually it's another intellect.
Yeah.
They don't want to call it that. How in the hell do they know? They did these the migratory animals that are born in the north know exactly how to get it. They don't follow mom and papa. They might or they might not.
Stop and ask for directions.
Half the time mom and papa are dead by that time. How the hell do they know how to do that? They see the bloody future. It's what they feel like doing, but it amounts to it. The wonderful thing about instinct, you do any damn thing you feel like doing. That's what they did. Now we're not supposed to do anything we feel like doing. It's against the law. It's immoral. But what they see is the future. And it's just dumb instincts. They're not intelligent. You can't lose that damn dog. Wherever he is, he knows exactly where he is. But they're dumb. That's why the human race is so unhappy. They don't know what the hell's coming next. But they always know that's just dumb instinct. And here this is an intellect that our intellect can't figure. You know, it couldn't be there because we can't imagine. How can you see the future? But they do. They see the bloody future.
Maybe it's just too threatening for most people to accept that possibility. You know, they're smart.
They're smarter than we are. They don't get neurotic. They're not that shepherd brat. They're not.
Wait a minute now.
They don't have.
Wait a minute. Hold on. You haven't met my in-law's dog.
Well, he's
that dog is psychotic, dysfunctional.
Yeah, but that becomes of instruction. He's been instructed to that. He doesn't know what the hell to do.
Okay. Why didn't he run away then?
What does he?
Why didn't he run away when he realized his instincts were being compromised?
Well, because he's been bred to do what man says, like we have. He's in the same spot we are.
So is this dog.
Huh?
So is this dog.
I don't try to train him much.
Well, yeah, but he's been bred over the years to be a hunt elk by the Germans, wasn't he?
Well, he's got one good advantage. He's closer to the wolf than those little feist dogs. He's still a runner and a smeller. He just loves to run, smell everything around. So hunting types are much better because they haven't been malformed by selective breeding. These poor little dogs, like the little terriers and junkie all over the place, they've been all bred out all the way from the wolf.
They don't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah, they don't know a damn thing. They're like us. They're waiting for instructions.
Well, this is a miniature beagle. So my point there.
Well, lovely.
These are the first dogs I've tried not to train much.
How's it coming?
We're good. He must be more responsive in a way because he loves to run.
He's sticking around on his own.
He knows when you're feeling rotten right away. You have to know him. I can tell other people I feel terrible. Pay attention. But this business and instinct is what we deserted. We've been neurotic ever since. we're instructed by all the cockamamie cultures that come along. Everybody knows exactly what to do about this terrible situation. The world's coming to an end. The brain is so highly overrated, like Woody Allen says. All it is a telephone exchange. It doesn't originate anything, except bad information that's stuck in the no answer column. That's what screwed us up, was being instructed. We didn't know exactly how to be a human animal before we got instructed. We never worried about the future. You're a dumb dog. Makes me happy, doesn't need anything. Doesn't even need that collar. How come this so happy?
There's a column in this dog IQ book for blissfully ignorant.
We call them dumb. And they're happy, so we're intelligent and unhappy.
Well, you just call me dumb kid, so I guess it worked for me.
I never told you any of that. I don't know what to tell you.
That's right, I'm very happy.
He got very little moral instruction, so he did. Except the century got at you a little bit. He can sit here all day long, nothing doing, curl up and go to sleep. I think it's fun.
It takes, human drawing, it takes him about 50 years.
That's right. He enjoys
Have
everything.
you given him the test yet? Have you given him the test? Have you given the dog the test yet?
No. How to train your dog to act like a human. That's why these little dogs are so neurotic. They don't know what to do unless they're told. They've got
Dog
civilized.
IQ test.
And then the grizzly bears, they fatten up on salmon. When they get just the right amount of fat, they hibernate. But if they don't get fat enough, they can't hibernate. How do they know that? They stay up all winter. Some of the bears are younger than males. Don't get fed up on salmon, don't get enough fat on them. They stay up all winter hunting. Most of them will take the cubs because they know when they have just enough fat. How do they know that?
Well, that's a good question, because they have to know how long the winter's going to be.
Yeah.
How they take that into calculation.
Well, they see the bloody future. Good enough to that.
Don't wait for the groundhog.
No. How's the groundhog know when to eat just enough and when he's supposed to go to bed and when to wake up? He knows. They're dumb. But the human mind can't figure out it's possible to see the future. What they have is an intelligence that amounts to the same thing. Can't get lost.
It'd be fun to study animals that live in hurricane areas that are prone to hurricanes. The behavior, how the behavior changes measurably for a hurricane.
To see it coming.
It probably does.
Yeah. A lot of them know that. There's a funny thing in Normandy too, I probably already told you. All the cows got killed, all of them got killed by shellfire. Some of the cows all over Normandy did. Yeah, hell of a time, but they smelled along with the corpses, it was terrible. But I stopped at one farmhouse, and there was a lot of shelling going on. But then it would stop. But they had donkeys that would always run in the bank barn, the deep part, about 10 minutes before the shells would fall. I watched them all day long, and all the donkeys were alive. all the cows were dead. The chickens, but the donkeys, you know, they're pretty well remain donkeys. But they go in that deep part of the, I watched them go in the deep part of the barn, back where it was all earth. And when the shelving was over, they'd come out. But 10 minutes before, they disappear into there. There wasn't a dead donkey in Norman.
But the cows were just caught in the crossfire?
Yeah, the cows were out in the field. They've been bred to be very docile by interbreeding. You know, they don't even take them in the barn to milk them. They used to take a little three-legged stool, a two-legged stool, and go out in the field and milk them. But they didn't want them to stop eating grass. They got more milk that way.
Tell Timmy your dog story.
Huh?
Tell Timmy your dog story.
What dog?
Your D-Day story with the dog.
Oh, babe?
Yes, yes.
Oh, my God.
Great story.
I had this black lab in England for about a year. He could run like hell. So they were going to put us on the ship to ship us across to get shot at. And couldn't take the dog. No dog. So I gave him to the record section. The warrant officer on there said, take care of the dog. Do whatever you have to do. So they shipped the office force up to London. We were way down in Cornwall, about 150 miles away. He took a dog up there, and I met him a couple of weeks after we landed. Said, what happened to the dog? I said, Christ, I had to leave him on the dock. I went to get on the boat. And they wouldn't let me put him on the boat. So I said, well, he's safe anyway. And a couple of days later, I was in a mud barn up a dirt road with a little hill in front, so the shells wouldn't hit us all the time. I walked out in the road, and here comes this big black dog right down the road, full speed. Christ, must have been a few 100,000 troops ashore by that time. The front was 100 miles long. Here comes the dog down the road, jumps up.
Did he cross the front?
He came all the way across the channel. How that? I never knew how that could possibly happen. Even if he got in a boat or something, how the hell did he know where I was?
Exactly. Now, and how long did you get to stay together?
Huh?
Were you shot soon after that, or?
Well, the last I saw him was, I was walking up this road, and I didn't know where the damn front was, and I was just fiddling around. It was pretty deserted then. Down the road comes this big German tank. I jumped into this mud building. They used to have they'd fire high explosives at personnel, and they didn't like to use too much armor-piercing stuff because it wore out the barrels. So when I jumped in the goddamn building, he came tearing after me. The guy fired, and the last I saw, he was 20 feet in the air. But it didn't kill him. So after the tank went away and I was still alive, that son of a bitch was putting these shells right against the mud walls, and they just go off and dissipate. They wouldn't go through the mud at all. Been brick, it would have gone right on through. Explosive has to find an aperture to blow apart. So they just go off. So the tank went on. I guess he thought I was dead. He wouldn't have wasted any more shells on me. The dog was gone. But then somebody told me he was back with the kitchen outfit somewhere. I don't know what happened in the end because I got hit a couple of days later.
Oh. Tell how you got hit.
Oh, I did because I lost my temper.
How did it happen?
Well, we thought we had this marvelous spot because we'd taken St. Lo and they're going to give us a rest and just let us guard the road for Patton to go through, see. So they put up tents and all this kind of crap. And the goddamn Germans sent their tanks to cut the line, and we didn't know they were coming. So all hell broke loose, and they killed the colonel and a couple other people in this tent. And we didn't know where the hell we were, but I was trying to find headquarters this night.
This is around St. Lo?
Huh?
This is around St. Lo?
Yeah, it was about 15 miles the other side of St. Lo. A place called Philly Bodon. And I told the driver he didn't have to drive me up there. He was scared to death anyway. He got paralyzed by fear afterwards. I never got over it. Anyway, if you dig me a foxhole over by the chateau there, I'll price the Germans had shelled the ammunition trucks and they were blazing and blowing up. So he said, okay, he'd be glad to do that. So I went up to try to find where the hell the headquarters was. It was all blown up. Staggered around. When I got back, I made a mistake of walking in front of this. The Germans had gone right through us. There were tanks here and tanks there. And I, like a dummy, I walked. I was mad. I got back and the driver hadn't dug me a hole in this little orchard. So I said, hell. Too tired to dig a hole in this chateau. And it had a white stone. It was whitewashed. And I walked in front of it. All of a sudden, some German cut loose with a machine pistol. There was nothing but sparks all over the place. Oh my God. So, I didn't know I fell down. I went to get up, I couldn't get up. So then he quit. And I figured, well, I might as well spend the night at the goddamn chateau. And I looked at him. I thought my leg was cut off. There was only a couple of creases in the back of the knee. And then I had I don't know whether I had a couple of pieces of rock and some shell in my ankle. So I went in to the chateau, and here was this old Frenchman cooking a steak. I didn't even eat for about 2 days, so it didn't hurt. We sat down and ate the steak. Really didn't hurt till the next day. Then it all stiffened up. And I hobbled around for a while, and then they carted me off. And to this tent about 5 miles back, there was a field hospital. It was too crowded. Everybody was getting shot. So I was laying out in the field. This guy was next to me, and I knew you were supposed to take your sulfur pills. You had sulfur in them. Then you were supposed to drink a quart of water. But my canteen only had Calvados. I drank a couple. They took the sulfur pill and drank some of that. The guy next to me, let me have some. I haven't got any water either. So we had a lovely time. And if you got hit in the legs, so they hauled you off to England. I didn't know I was going to have to go back, but I did.
Oh.
Where are the sulfur pills from?
Keep you from getting angry.
Yeah.
They had penicillin on needles, but you couldn't carry this with you, so they gave me these. Your grandfather invented those pills, old Dr. Marshall. And so I thanked him and take the pills and drank the Calvados. We're fine. Never got infected at all.
Did you have open wounds, or?
Huh?
Did you have open wounds?
Yeah, actually,
Must have been awful.
But the open wounds weren't as bad as the one, the hole through my ankle. I guess that stuff's still in there, but never hit me.
Oh, they didn't operate? They didn't try to dig it out? Or?
Oh, yeah, they dug it out when I got to England.